I know a lot of you out there looking at the headline and are like, oh man, I love it. EA's Day of Reckoning is here after Star Wars game uproar. $3 billion in stock value wiped out. And we're going to talk about that right now and why it's a little bit misleading. What's going on, guys? Randall Thor 19, the man with the million, back again with another video. And before we get into it, make sure to check out my Devil May Cry 5 video where I go over the rumor that it is a PlayStation 4 console exclusive set to be revealed, I don't know when, PSX Video Game Awards sometime next year. There was a huge leak on Reset Era. Make sure you check out that video when you got that chance to. And as always, check out all the links in the description, the link to PayPal and Twitter and all that good stuff. Follow me on social media. You know how it is, right? Anyways, Star Wars, it's the gift that keeps on giving. A lot of information always coming through. And today, CNBC wrote an article saying that the Day of Reckoning is finally here for EA. They lost $3 billion in stock value, completely wiped out because of Star Wars. And they even interviewed YouTubers Jim Sterling and Angry Joe, surprisingly, for this article. So we'll talk about that stuff. But before we get into it, I want to mention why this is a little bit less misleading, because the article, the way it's headlined, and when you read it, you would assume that it's entirely because of Star Wars, that all the stuff that happened with the game and how maybe it's selling under like it's underperforming, it's not selling as well as it should, and the whole microtransaction uproar and the boycotts and the protest and Disney stepping in, like that is the reason why they've lost $3 billion in stock value, which isn't necessarily the case, because truth be told, their share price actually dropped from $119.60 to $112.70 between October 31st and November 2nd, which is obviously a couple weeks before the Battlefront controversy even started. So you can see they lost the majority of their stock value before Battlefront even came out. Since then, they dropped down to $109.50, which represents a further drop of $1 billion in market value. But, I mean, for EA, a company which has a market value of like $30 billion, it's not something that's going to cause heads roll, and stuff like this happens all the time in, stock markets. It's kind of more of a guessing game. So a lot of this has to do with them missing out on their Q3 analysis. They posted it to Wall Street. They missed out on some targets, and that's why the stock dropped so much. In fact, so much today, the stock's actually starting to go back up. So even though that they're out $3 billion in stock, supposedly, like according to this article, they're going to get it all back at some point. And the only way you actually lose money is if you decided to sell now. Then, of course, you lose it. If you kept your money in, well, the value will go back up. So they're technically really not out $3 billion in stock. And it wasn't all because of Star Wars. It mainly had to do with them missing their targets for Q3 and people on Wall Street panicking and selling the stock. And then, of course, the Star Wars situation added on to that, and they lost more money. But it's gaining back up. So, I mean, eventually it'll get its stuff back. But it's interesting to see here, what some of the analysts have to say. One Wall Street analyst was not impressed during his checks to different stores during the holiday weekend. And he said, "We were underwhelmed by the sell-through for Star Wars Battlefront 2 over the Black Friday weekend, which follows a controversial launch for the game." Stifle analyst Drew Krum wrote in a note to clients on Sunday. "The game's weak sales are a secondary issue for Electronic Arts. The viability of its profitable microtransactions strategy is now in question going forward." And we've heard all about all these different countries kind of vowing to take a look at whether or not it's gambling and things like that. Who knows what will happen over it. Doug Cruz goes on to say that Battlefront 2 is the pointy tip of the iceberg. The biggest recent controversy is centered around EA's Star Wars Battlefront, where early evidence suggests player anger over a mishandled loot box economy may be in fact impacting sales. We think the time has come for the industry to collectively establish a set of standards for microtransactions implementation, both to repair damaged player perceptions and avoid the threat of regulation. So what he is saying is he wants the industry to come together and being like, this is what you have to do for microtransactions, right? Because currently loot boxes and all that stuff, they've been damaged by what happened with Star Wars Battlefront 2. So much so that he thinks everybody should come together and put down some sort of standard about what is acceptable to sell in microtransaction loot boxes. And also, if you do that, you avoid the looming threat of maybe government regulation, which obviously everybody wants to avoid. So that is what that analyst is talking about. And interesting enough, Blake Jorgensen talked about how the Ultimate Team stuff, so this is all great information, I love this stuff, made EA $800 million in high profit margin sales for the company during the previous year. And he added, EA intended to extend a similar mechanic to other franchises such as Battlefield and Battlefront, but now that whole strategy is at risk. And of course, they asked Jim Sterling and Angry Joe what they thought about all this stuff. And Jim Sterling said, after the communal and political backlash EA received over Battlefront 2, the industry at large is going to have to walk back its loot back plans a little bit. And Angry Joe said, I think gamers have drawn a line in the sand at pay-to-win loot boxes being tied directly to player progression in AAA games. If EA continues that exact type of practice that was initially in Battlefront 2, then yes, I'm sure it would backfire once again. And that's the kind of the thing here, is that this all could have been avoided. EA chose to have this loot box system tied to player progression in a way that was very choking. Like it stifled like the way you played the game and tried to progress, where in other games like Overwatch or Rainbow Six and things like that, it's just cosmetic stuff. Interesting enough, CFO Blake Jorgensen, when he was at the Credit Suisse Annual Technology, Media and Telecom Conference, that it was actually a commitment to the Star Wars canon and realism that led it to fulfill Battlefront 2 loot boxes with credit star cards and similar items, rather than throwaway cosmetics that don't have any impact on gameplay. He says the one thing we're focused on, and they are extremely focused on, is not violating the canon of Star Wars. It's an amazing brand that's built over many, many years, and so if you did a bunch of cosmetic things, you might start to violate the canon, right? Darth Vader in white probably doesn't make sense versus in black. Not to mention you probably don't want Darth Vader in pink. No offense to pink, but I don't think that's right in the canon. So there might be things we can do cosmetically, and we're working with Lucasfilm on that, but coming into it, it wasn't as easy as if we were building a game around our own IP where it really didn't matter. It matters in Star Wars because Star Wars fans want realism. I mean, that is his answer on why Star Wars Battlefront 2 just didn't really have a cosmetic system, because who wants to see Darth Vader in pink? And who wants to see Yoda as purple? It's about realism. I mean, is he telling the truth? Or did they just really kind of get lusty with greed and want microtransaction tied to the progression so they could potentially make more money? I'm sure the truth lies in between there. I'm sure Lucasfilm and Disney, who owns the IP rights, probably doesn't want them changing the appearances of stormtroopers and iconic characters at a whim, like you can in Overwatch and other games that have cosmetic loot crates. You know, they got to look a specific way and wear colors and things like that. So I'm sure that has some sort of truth behind it, but who knows how much of it is true. Anyways, it's always interesting talking Star Wars, and I wanted to do this video because it's a little bit misleading, and I wanted to kind of get right information out there. Even though EA's lost out on $3 billion in stock, it's not all because of Star Wars, and they will eventually get that money back probably sooner rather than later. Anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure if you did to hit that like button to show your support for the channel. Hit the subscribe button so if you're new or haven't already, what are you waiting for? Share this out on social media like Twitter and Facebook. Hit the notification bell so you're always notified when I drop new content. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to watch all the videos. It means a hell of a lot to me. And I'll see everybody tomorrow for some new ones. Later, guys.